Long before the days of planes, trains, and automobiles, steamboats were the heart of American trade and transportation. Cincinnati was once the chief port along the Ohio River. So vital was the city to the nation's transit that it earned itself the name Queen City of the West. In fact, even before steamboats were invented in the 1780s, the river was the primary way to get to Cincinnati. With no roads to speak of and hills surrounding the cities, keelboats, barges, and canoes traveled the Ohio River to bring communication, goods, and new settlers to the growing river town in those early days. Prior to 1815, barges ran goods from Cincinnati to New Orleans on a total round trip of approximately 100 days. Even with the earliest steamboats, this trip was cut down to 30 days. On the day before Christmas of 1814, the first steamboat to operate on western waters found its way to the Cincinnati port. Known as the Orleans, this 200-ton vessel was met with much fanfare when it docked in the city harbor. It was the coming of a new era. Cincinnati holds 3 steamboat records, 2 by the Moselle and the other by the Queen City. The Moselle, when it was constructed in 1838, was billed as the fastest steamer on the river. Sadly, the second title the Moselle holds is that of the worst steamboat disaster in history. 25 days after it was launched, the boat exploded, killing 160 people. Far more pleasant record is the one held by the steamboat that shares Cincinnati's nickname. The Queen City, when it was launched in 1897, was said to be the most luxurious steamer on western waters. The Island Queen was a series of 2 famous American side-wheeler steamboats built by the Cincinnati Marine Railway Company. The first vessel was built in 1896, but caught fire in 1922. Pictured is the second Island Queen, which was built in 1925 and owned by the Coney Island Company. The Coney Island Company hired musicians to entertain passengers on board, and the boat frequently traveled to New Orleans and even went as far upstream as Pittsburgh. The second Island Queen was eventually damaged in an explosion in 1947 and was unable to be repaired. Cincinnati is a city of hills and is often referred to as the City of 7 Hills. Before the time of public transportation, residents of the city would use a system of stairways known as the Steps of Cincinnati to access their hillside homes and other surrounding areas. At the height of their use in the 19th century, there were over 30 miles of hillside steps built in the city. This was the primary way that many neighborhoods were connected to one another. The first set of steps was built by residents of Mount Auburn in the 1830s to allow easier access to Findlay Market and over the Rhine. The Steps of Cincinnati also hold religious significance for some residents and are central to a perennial Cincinnati tradition. Since 1860, the faithful ascend the steps of the Holy Cross Immaculata Church on Good Friday to the church's front door from the neighborhood below while praying each step, originally 85 steps total. The original steps were made of wood, but in 1911, the city of Cincinnati helped the church put in concrete steps. Those who participate in this tradition now can expect to climb 94 steps from St. Gregory to the church. One of the first attempts to improve transportation in Cincinnati came in 1850 in the form of a horse-drawn omnibus. This was a team of 4 horses that would pull a bus loaded with a dozen passengers. This form of transportation was never satisfactory, however. Horse-drawn omnibuses were slow, expensive, and often over capacity. The trip from the center of the city would take 2 hours, with the ascent up Sycamore Hill being especially grueling. Even with a double team being used, a loaded bus would still require several stops to allow horses to rest, and if Sycamore Hill was icy, service was often suspended in the winter months. Transportation inspiration came in the form of inclines from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a city where hills also complicated travel throughout the city. The first of these structures built was the Mount Auburn Incline Plane, which opened to the public in 1872 and ran from Main Street at Mulberry Street to the top of Mount Auburn, with 900 feet of track and an elevation of 312 feet. This incline had twin tracks with steam engines on the summit that cranked balanced passenger cars along steel cables. One car went up while the other went down, and the cars were raised on stilts to keep them horizontal. This incline was unique in that the grade was not the same, with the bottom of the hill much steeper than the top. The Mount Auburn incline remained in operation until 1898, when it closed for repairs and was never reopened. The second inclined plane was that on Price Hill, built by the Price Hill Inclined Plane Company. This was on 8th Street and was opened on July 13, 1875. It ascended 800 feet with separate tracks for passenger and freight traffic to an elevation of 350 feet. This was built at a cost of $300,000. A second pair of inclined tracks was added in 1877 exclusively for freight. Most of the inclines had a resort, but Price Hill House was the only one that didn't serve alcohol. Additional inclines were eventually built in other areas of the city. The Mount Adams incline was completed in 1876 and was the longest running incline until its closure in 1948 and has since been demolished. Popularity of this incline was such that it is said that it ran for 19 hours a day due to demand. It took 2 minutes and 20 seconds to get to the top of Mount Adams using this method of transportation and provided access to Eden Park. The amazing views of the city made this incline a popular tourist attraction. The Bellevue Incline, which opened in 1876 as well, was also known as the Elm Street Incline or the Clifton Incline Plane. This incline had the highest elevation of all 5 inclines in the city, and the Bellevue House at the summit was considered to be one of the most beautiful of the incline houses, built in the Tudor style. The Fairview Incline ran from 1894 to 1923. It was the shortest of the 5 inclines and did not have an entertainment house. The inclines were originally designed for use with horse cars, but all but the Fairview Incline were electrified and converted to carry electric streetcars. When horse cars fell out of popularity and cable cars were introduced in the city, the first routes in Cincinnati were on Gilbert Avenue, Mount Auburn, and Vine Street. While cable cars required that the car be pulled by a constantly running wire hidden under the street, this proved to be much more unreliable and expensive than using electricity, and therefore the system did not last very long. Starting on August 17, 1889, the first streetcars were introduced, and the existing cable cars in the city were converted to electric streetcars or abandoned. The lines grew until there were 222 miles of streetcar tracks in Cincinnati and northern Kentucky. For decades, Cincinnati's streetcar system consistently carried over 100 million passengers a year. Cincinnati was one of only 3 cities in North America whose streetcars used double overhead trolley wire and twin trolley poles on each streetcar. Streetcars remained the main form of public transportation until the popularity of the automobile caused ridership to wane. Local highways were improved and brought on by the anti-rail stance of the city of Cincinnati and the suburbs of Norwood, and streetcars were quickly phased out in favor of buses and trolley buses. The last streetcars were retired on April 29, 1951. As streetcars went out of business, Cincinnati embraced buses. However, this change did not last long. In the 1950s, residents of Cincinnati began to move into the suburbs and started buying cars. Ridership on buses dropped from 130 million in 1946 to 39 million annually in 1963. Today, about 15 million people ride Cincinnati's buses each year. However, ridership is not what it once was. The John A. Roebling Suspension Bridge, originally known as the Cincinnati-Covington Bridge, spans the Ohio River between Cincinnati, Ohio, and Covington, Kentucky. When opened on December 1, 1866, it was the longest suspension bridge in the world at 1,057 feet. This bridge was a prototype for the Brooklyn Bridge, which was also designed by Roebling. The original deck of the bridge was built at the lowest possible cost because of Civil War inflation, but the stone towers had been designed to carry a much heavier load than was originally demanded. In 1896, the bridge received a second set of main cables, a wider steel deck, and a longer northern approach. The reconstruction significantly altered the appearance of the bridge, but the new 30-ton weight limit extended its usefulness through the 20th century and beyond. In 1976, in honor of America's bicentennial, the bridge was painted blue. The Newport South Bank Bridge, popularly known as the Purple People Bridge, stretches 2,670 feet over the Ohio River, connecting Newport, Kentucky to downtown Cincinnati. Today we know the Purple People Bridge as a pedestrian bridge. However, this bridge was originally Cincinnati's first railroad bridge spanning the river, opening on April 1, 1872. The bridge piers were built with stone from Adams County, Ohio. The bridge eventually opened in 1896 to streetcar, pedestrian, and automobile traffic. The bridge officially closed to railroad traffic in 1987 and closed to automobile traffic in 2001. After years of neglect, it was restored to the pedestrian-only bridge that we know today. The Brent Spence Bridge is a double-decker cantilevered truss bridge that carries Interstate 71 and 75 across the Ohio River between Covington and Cincinnati. The top deck carries Kentucky-bound traffic, and the bottom deck carries Ohio-bound traffic. When the bridge originally opened in November 1963, it carried only 3 lanes of traffic each way. In 1985, the emergency shoulders were eliminated and the bridge was restriped with 4 lanes in each direction. Currently, with the bridge over capacity, proposed alternatives to the Brent Spence Bridge are still being discussed. The Daniel Carter Beard Bridge is more commonly known as the Big Mac Bridge due to the bright yellow coloring of the arch that makes the bridge stand out. This bridge opened in 1976 and is named for Daniel Carter Beard, the founder of the Sons of Daniel Boone and one of the founders of Boy Scouts of America. This bridge carries Interstate 471 between Cincinnati and Newport. Streetcars eventually returned to Cincinnati. In 2016, the Cincinnati Bell Connector opened to passengers in September. The streetcar operates on a 3.6-mile loop through downtown Cincinnati and north to Findlay Market. Future extensions have been proposed to the uptown area where access could open to UC, the regional hospitals, and the Cincinnati Zoo, and eventually northern Kentucky. The Cincinnati Subway is a set of incomplete derelict tunnels and stations for a rapid transit system beneath the streets of Cincinnati, Ohio. It is recognized as the largest abandoned subway tunnel in the United States. It was built in the early 20th century as an upgrade to the Cincinnati streetcar system, but was abandoned due to escalating costs, the collapse of funding amidst political bickering, and the Great Depression during the 1920s and 1930s. 6 stations were created along Central Parkway. Underground were Race Street, Liberty Street, and Brighton Place. Above ground were Marshall Street, Ludlow Avenue, and Clifton Avenue. Tunnels were also constructed in Norwood. As the subway expanded further out from downtown, the city began to experience economic hardships. In 1928, the construction of the subway system in Cincinnati was indefinitely canceled. Thank you for listening to this brief history on Cincinnati Transit. If you enjoyed what you learned today, I would also like to recommend 3 titles currently in the collection here at Clermont County Public Library. First, if you would like a book about mass transit in Cincinnati that goes more in depth on the methods of transportation used by the city, you might want to check out Cincinnati on the Go, A History of Mass Transit by Alan J. Singer. Next, you could try Cincinnati Then and Now by Jeff Seuss. While this title covers a variety of information, readers are given the opportunity to view vintage and modern photographs of various transit methods and architecture side by side, which really puts into perspective how the city has changed over time. Last, if you just can't stop thinking about the fact that the city of Cincinnati almost had a subway system, you should definitely look into Cincinnati's Incomplete Subway, The Complete History by Jacob Mecklenburg. If you need help finding these titles or any others on this topic, please give your branch a call and a staff member will be able to help you find what you're looking for. Thanks again for watching. This presentation was originally created as an outreach program for senior centers in Clermont County, and if you're looking for more history presentations, please visit clermontlibrary.org/adult-resources to check out additional slideshows and transcripts on a wide range of topics.